Every morning at 6:15, Harold Martin pushed his cleaning cart through the marble lobby of the Ashford Building. He'd been the head janitor there for 23 years. 23 years of polishing floors, emptying trash bins, and watching people rush past without seeing him. Harold didn't mind being invisible. At 62, he'd learned that real work didn't need applause. But there was one person who always noticed him. And not in a good way. Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore. She lived in apartment 4B and had the sharpest tongue Harold had ever encountered. Every single morning, she'd shuffle into the lobby with her walker, scowling at the world. "You missed a spot," she'd snap, pointing at the already spotless floor. "The trash chute smells," she'd complain, even though Harold had just sanitized it. "These elevators are too slow. What do we even pay you for?" Harold would simply nod. "I'll take care of it, Mrs. Whitmore," he'd say quietly. Always the same response. Always patient. The other residents would shake their heads. "I don't know how you put up with her," they'd tell him. "That woman has never said a kind word to anyone." But Harold had noticed something others hadn't. Mrs. Whitmore's hands trembled when she gripped her walker. Her eyes, behind all that anger, looked deeply tired. And some mornings, he could see she'd been crying. So every day, Harold listened to her complaints. And every day, he did a little something extra. He made sure the handrail near her apartment was especially clean, because he'd seen her lean on it heavily. He kept the lobby extra warm on cold mornings, because she wore the same thin cardigan year-round. He even started arriving 15 minutes earlier, so the elevator would be waiting when she came down. She never thanked him. She probably didn't even notice. But Harold noticed her. One Tuesday morning in October, Mrs. Whitmore seemed worse than usual. She struggled with her walker, nearly stumbling on the perfectly level floor. "This building is falling apart," she shouted. "Everything's a hazard. You people don't care if I break my neck." Harold set down his mop and walked over slowly. "Mrs. Whitmore, may I help you to the bench?" "I don't need your help." "I don't need anyone's help." But her legs were shaking. Harold gently took her elbow. She didn't pull away. He guided her to the cushioned bench near the window, the one he'd requested management install 6 months ago, right in the warm morning sunlight. Mrs. Whitmore sat down heavily. For a moment, she was quiet. Then, so softly Harold almost didn't hear it, "My daughter hasn't called in 3 weeks." Harold pulled over his cleaning cart and sat on his step stool beside her. He didn't say anything. Sometimes silence is the kindest response. "She's so busy," Mrs. Whitmore continued, staring at her hands. "Important job. Important life. No time for a bitter old woman who can't even walk straight anymore." "You're not bitter," Harold said gently. "You're hurting. There's a difference." Mrs. Whitmore looked at him sharply, ready to argue. But something in his weathered face, in his patient eyes, stopped her. Her expression crumpled. "I'm so alone," she whispered. Harold reached into his cart and pulled out his thermos. "Would you share some tea with me, Mrs. Whitmore? It's just regular breakfast tea, but it's hot." She took the cup with trembling hands. They sat together in the quiet morning light, two people who'd learned that life doesn't always turn out the way you planned. This became their routine. Every morning, tea on the bench. Mrs. Whitmore still complained, that was her way, but now Harold understood. The complaints weren't really about dirty floors or slow elevators. They were about loneliness. About feeling invisible. About growing old in a world that had stopped seeing you. 3 weeks passed. Then, one morning, a woman in an elegant business suit strode into the lobby. She had Mrs. Whitmore's sharp features, but softened by youth and success. She stopped when she saw Harold sitting on the bench with her mother, sharing tea and quiet conversation. "Mom," she said uncertainly. Mrs. Whitmore looked up. Catherine? The younger woman's eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry I haven't called. Work has been absolutely crazy, and she stopped, noticing the janitor beside her mother. Am I interrupting something? Harold started to stand, but Mrs. Whitmore's hand shot out and gripped his arm. This is Harold, she said, and her voice was different now. Softer. He's been keeping me company. Catherine looked confused. Then she really looked at Harold. At his kind eyes. At the way her mother was holding his arm, like he was someone precious. I need to speak with you, Catherine said to Harold. Privately, if you don't mind. Harold's heart sank. He'd probably overstepped. Gotten too familiar with a resident. This was it, after 23 years, he'd finally crossed a line. He followed Catherine to the management office. She closed the door and turned to face him. I'm Catherine Whitmore. I own this building. Harold's mouth went dry. He hadn't known Mrs. Whitmore's daughter was the owner. He'd never made the connection. Catherine's voice was tight with emotion. How long have you been having tea with my mother? About 3 weeks, ma'am. I apologize if I... Stop. Catherine held up her hand. Her eyes were red. Do you know what my mother said to me just now, when you walked away? Harold shook his head. She said, that's the only person in this whole building who treats me like I'm still human. Do you understand what that means? What that says about me as a daughter? She sat down heavily in the desk chair. I've been so caught up in running this place, in being successful, that I forgot. I forgot my mom is lonely. I forgot she needs more than a nice apartment and a monthly check. She needs someone to see her. Catherine looked up at Harold. And you saw her. A janitor making probably a fraction of what I make, and you saw my mother when I didn't. Mrs. Whitmore is easy to see, ma'am, Harold said quietly. Once you understand that anger is just pain wearing armor. Catherine wiped her eyes. I'm doubling your salary, she said suddenly. And I'm creating a new position, resident liaison. Your job will be to do exactly what you've been doing. Notice people. Care about them. Be the heart of this building, because clearly you already are. Harold was speechless. But there's a condition, Catherine added. You have to let me join you and my mother for tea sometimes. I need to learn how to see her the way you do. Harold smiled. The tea's not very good, ma'am. Just plain breakfast tea from a thermos. It's perfect, Catherine said. That afternoon, Harold found a handwritten note slipped under his supply closet door. The handwriting was shaky but deliberate. Thank you for seeing me. Eleanor. He folded it carefully and put it in his wallet, right next to the photo of his late wife. Some things are worth keeping close. The next morning, there were 3 people on the bench in the morning sunlight, sharing tea and conversation. A daughter learning to slow down. A mother learning to soften. And Harold, teaching them both what he'd always known. Kindness doesn't cost anything. But it's worth everything. Sometimes the smallest acts of grace create the biggest changes. And sometimes being seen is the greatest gift of all.